refuses to accommodate an atheist for their invocation? Let's find out right now on the Atheist Forum. You are about to enter the no superstition zone of rational thinking and intellectual curiosity here on the Atheist Forum. Standing by for your questions or comments at 727-441-3000, where you can talk to a real live atheist here on Tan Talk 1340. The First Amendment says that Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of any religion or prohibiting the exercise thereof. That means that the government cannot take a position on any religion being the official religion of this country. What happens when a county commission, during its invocation, says no atheists allowed, Christians only? Well, sometimes those things end up in court. And we're going to find out what happened when that happened right now on the Atheist Forum. Ed Golly with you, and in studio with me is Judy Adkins, Tracy Thomas, and what's your name again? Never mind. So another guy over here. Okay. And from Brevard or Central Florida, Chase Hansel. Chase, talk to us.
Thank you. Hey, thanks for having me on.
Tell us where you're calling from, please.
Oh, it's Brevard County, Florida.
Okay, and that's, of course, where the lawsuit took place, right?
Yes, sir, it is.
I think the whole issue started with the Greece County, New York invocation lawsuit that ended up in the Supreme Court, and then the Supreme Court of the United States said, well, you can have invocations, meaning you being city councils, county commissions, government bodies, but you must open those invocations to people of any faith or even of no faith at all. Am I right?
Yeah, so the issue with the Greece versus Galloway decision, the reason it became a court case is the previous understanding had kind of loosely been that you're allowed to have invocations, but that the invocation must be relatively ecumenical. So not super sectarian, not, in Jesus' name and you're all going to hell or whatever, but fairly ecumenical, general, wishy-washy. And the Greece versus Galloway case said, hey, this town has been giving these very directly Christian, heavily Christian invocations, so we're suing. So they go through, one of the important things to note in the Greece versus Galloway case is that the town of Greece really went out of their way to try and get Wiccans and minority religions and Jews and everyone. Basically, they had a super open door policy. They even went out searching for people, as I understand it. So the court case basically, the Supreme Court basically said, look, you really can't censor what the invocation is going to be. The government shouldn't be picking through your prayers and deciding, line item vetoing things. So unless you're being proselytizing or, demeaning to someone, then you can do it. And specifically, they said any pastor or layperson, because keep in mind, some churches don't even have a centralized pastor. It's a distributed church. So every person in the church is of kind of equal, value as far as being a pastor goes. And religious and non-religious, they even said, and specifically atheists, must be allowed to give invocations.
And so you did.
Well, no, not yet.
You tried to. Let's put it that way.
So the history of our little case is David Williamson's group, the Central Florida Free Thought Community, I believe before this and while this was going on, had been doing invocations throughout Central Florida. His group's out of Orlando. We're on the East Coast, like an hour's drive away.
And, of course, we've been doing them down here, too, in the different city and the council commission meetings in
We've
in
done
the
them in
area.
Clearwater, Largo, and St. Pete, for sure.
Right.
And you know what? The buildings haven't burned down yet.
No, not yet.
It's fantastic. It's amazing.
Just a hurricane.
Well, yeah.
Joe and Tracy both have done invocations for our group in local community.
That's fantastic. So in May of 2014, so a number of years ago at this point, he asks, amongst various other counties and stuff that he's been going to give an invocation in Brevard, and got kind of a cold shoulder. So some time went by, and he asked again. By August, he got a letter kind of saying, hey, thanks, but no thanks. You can use the 3-minute public comment section, but, we think that you guys are kind of nasty and we don't want to be offensive to Christians and all this kind of stuff. This is important because this is something that the county has used quite a bit in its legal arguments, is that they aren't being discriminatory, that anybody can come give an invocation during the public comment section. Now, initially, the public comment section was near the end of the meeting. They did move a segment of the public comment section up closer to the beginning, but anyone can say anything they want, basically, in a public comment section. The normal invocation is at the beginning of the meeting, not the end.
So that doesn't cut it.
Right. Yeah, they get the normal invocation gets 5 minutes instead of 3. Plus, they get an introduction by the county commission. Plus, they typically get a few minutes to describe their group, their church, to the people in the meeting. So, not exactly the same. Sort of a sit in the back of the bus and your seat's half the size of everyone else's.
It's another good example of how it's still considered by many people perfectly okay to slur atheists at any time they want to. If they said that about anybody else, the social justice warriors would be all over them on Twitter. They'd probably have to resign in short order.
Oh, and if they had said, "Oh, you're Jewish? Well, yeah, you're going to need to sit in the back." Like,
yeah,
scandal,
The uppity atheists.
But yeah, an atheist, perfectly fine. It's good political moves to throw us under the bus. You'll get kudos from a lot of people. There's a lot of benefit and very little downside to doing it, I've found, from many politicians. So, fast forwarding a little bit, they got an official letter from the county commission saying, thanks but no thanks. So by November, the Anti-Defamation League sent a letter on David's behalf saying, no, hey, you really need to cut this out. Greece versus Galloway just happened within the last year. You need to let this guy give an invocation. They sent another letter saying, no, we're right, but that's when they moved the 30 minutes of public comment closer to the beginning of the meeting, saying, well, here, you can have this little half seat in the middle of the bus. How's that? So somewhere about this time, I was starting to hear a lot about it, and I was getting involved a little bit. I'd been kind of cheerleading Dave, saying, hey, great what you're doing, but I studied enough church-state separation cases for our group, which, by the way, I'm the president of the Space Coast Free Thought Association here in Brevard, and we talk a lot in our meetings about church-state separation cases and everything. I'm like, man, this is kind of heading for a lawsuit. These guys are either going to back down or somebody's going to pick this case up. So I started talking with Dave a little bit, cheerleading him and encouraging him, but saying, hey, man, do you think this is going to be a real case? You got real legal people behind you? Well, we started talking more, and by January of 2015 now, the Americans United for the Separation of Church and State, the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the ACLU, and the ACLU of Florida sent a letter on our behalf. So I had gotten involved at this point. And we have 3 other plaintiffs, and I forget exactly what the timing is on when they all joined, but we were starting to pick up legal momentum, and we were starting to pick up more people. So that went to them with nary a response. In May, another letter went to the commission. I think by this point we'd had pretty much all of our plaintiffs were kind of signing on saying, hey, yeah, I want to give an invocation. Come on, let me. And at about that point, they decided to adopt a resolution changing the board's operating procedures. So they're putting it in writing that the invocation is for a monotheist only, but that anyone can give any other kind of invocation in the public comment section, and they're starting to justify themselves more. It was about an 11-page document. So they're trying to not just sort of have this be an ad hoc policy that they go by, but actually written into the rules of how the county commission works. And it was at that point that, we saw the writing on the wall and we filed the lawsuit. So that was midsummer of 2015. And, I had already been involved for well over 6 months at that point. let me tell you, if you ever get involved in a lawsuit, these things move slow.
There's no if about it,
We've
sir.
been involved in lawsuits. We
Yes.
actually sued the city of Lakeland for having an invocation, but we lost our case.
Yeah, I read through the judge's settlement on our case, and your lawsuit came up, I think, 2 or 3 times
Wow.
in the judgment. So, you know, legal wrangling of all sorts and varieties has been going on since then. You know, you hand over all the emails and all the files on your hard drive, and you ask a million questions, and you know, your lawyers are doing stuff. You end up going through depositions, which are nerve-wracking, and their lawyers are asking you a bunch of questions. And
How much have they spent in taxpayer money to defend this issue so far?
oh boy, wouldn't I love to know? I mean, I don't know. They've been using the county lawyers, their own county lawyers. I don't know if they even keep track
They
of
gotta
their
pay
own
'em.
time. Yeah. You know, would they always have been sitting around if this case had come or not? I don't know. I honestly don't know the answer to that.
No,
It's
but
something
if you had lost the case, they would have calculated that and
Yes.
stuck you with the fees.
Exactly.
See?
Oh, sure.
So they do
And-
know, but they're not telling
Yeah.
you because they didn't win.
I'm sure it is calculatable. I'm sure nobody has yet. But that's
Yeah, you could probably do a Freedom of Information Act request and get that information, because it would be nice to publicize how they wasted the taxpayers' money. And I know
Right.
you all may be rewarded or awarded a settlement to cover your cost and stuff. So that will come out too.
It's just a fine example of how the average public official is willing to spend any amount of money and take any amount of risk as long as it isn't his risk or his money. If he were actually going out to defend some of the other teachings of the Bible, give away everything that thou hast to the poor, or make yourself into a eunuch, I don't hear him willing to go to the mat on these kinds of issues. But as long as it's somebody else's money, as long as it's an issue that's popular with their constituents, they're willing to do anything that requires no risk or effort on their part.
I understand. I work with a ton of different people, and I get the whole, I don't really want to hear an atheist invocation. I don't want to hear secular invocations. All I want is Christian prayers. Like, I even understand that, but I mean, their legal arguments were very lacking, and so fast forward to now in 2017, we got a very positive judgment from our judge. We filed, because this is a constitutional case, with a court in Orlando. It's a federal district court for the Central Florida area, and other than a few minor pieces which he sided against us with, it was a very resounding, no, what you people are doing is wrong. You're trying to cite, Greece versus Galloway as letting you do these invocations and pushing the atheist to the back, but that's not right. There's no way you can read this. It's a 70-page document. I almost don't even recommend that anyone sit down and read it, but for being a legal document, there's some pretty colorful languages in places about how, the arguments, quote, don't hold water, and things like that. Stuff
Yeah.
I wasn't exactly expecting a judge to do.
One of the things they said is it's regrettable religion has become such an instrument in Brevard County.
It is. It is.
And it is.
We have roads that need paving. I still have a huge pile of debris outside my house because of the Hurricane Irma. I mean, there's a lot of things we got going on in this county. We are not a super mega rich county with nothing to do but money to blow and stuff, but, here we are. So, other than a few minor portions, we won on the First and 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. And there's a similar article in the state constitution similar
Right.
to the no establishment clause. The county had been asking everyone to stand, and we had kind of objected to that. That was dismissed as not being coercive enough. The people who were in the meeting sat during the meetings, and they weren't kicked out or harassed or anything like that. So the judge decided that it may be mildly coercive, but obviously not so coercive that you couldn't sit through it. There's also a no-aid portion of the Florida Constitution that was dismissed. That one's got some kind of specific legalese to it. I'm not too privy to it. But the main portions, the establishment and everything under the Constitution, the First and the 14th Amendments, were what we were really going for, and decided in our favor. So for now, both sides get to basically submit here's how we think we can fix the situation. Although I've heard from our local news that Scott Knox, the attorney for the county commission, who's been really pushing a lot of this action, says that thinks the judge is completely wrong and that he really wants to move forth and appeal this. So this may only be the beginning.
Simple solution, though, is just get rid of all these invocations.
Yes.
Government meetings don't take place in order to conduct religious services, and it's because these government bodies represent all of the people without respect to whether what religion they subscribe to or none at all, and therefore they should be completely neutral with respect to religion. Any county commissioner that wants to pray, or city councilman that wants to pray, can do it in his office before he walks into the meeting. But what they're doing, in my opinion, is always trying to reinforce this idea that in order to be a proper citizen in this country, you need to be superstitious. And then they can go a step farther and say, now the particular superstition you're supposed to subscribe to is Christianity.
Yeah, and actually, sorry to interrupt, but
okay.
A fact I wanted to throw out there as part of the finding and doing all the research for the case, from 2010, the beginning, to I think it was about mid-2016, there were 195 invocations given at the county commission, 7 of which were non-Christian, 6 Jewish, and only 1 generally monotheistic. So that shows the weighting of the current types of invocations that have been going on.
Yeah.
Although they did have a moment of silence, I think once or twice. So that's not specifically monotheistic. So I'm not sure if that even fits under their own rules. But they got away with it on their own.
I've been doing some research on some other cities that haven't given us the opportunity to do invocations, and in all fairness, we haven't approached them completely. We sent out a whole bunch of letters at the beginning of this, right after the Greece case was decided, but we've kind of backed off because it's we're widespread, and getting people to do invocations isn't always easy. But I decided to go back and look at some of the things that have been done. In Tampa itself, 56% of the invocations this year were Christian. And I mean, like, pastors and blatantly Christian. There were 2 Jewish invocations this year. But the disturbing thing to me is one of them opened with, "We are gathered here in his name."
Oh.
At a government meeting. And
Bob Buckhorn?
no, it wasn't Bob Buckhorn. Yeah. Buckhorn's
His name.
yeah. And 7 of them, or 21%, were done in Jesus' name.
And it was even worse than that in Polk County, right? The Lakeland,
yes,
which is where we brought the suit.
Yeah,
originally.
I've got the statistics on Lakeland at home, but I wanted to talk about Tampa particularly tonight. And the sad part was many of these were done by employees of the county coming out in Jesus' name.
On the taxpayer's dime.
On the
because they're getting
taxpayer's dime,
paid,
and
right.
being employees representing the, and a big deal was made about their employees, and they work for the county, and a big deal was made about that.
Well, if you've just joined us, you're listening to the Voice of Atheism in Florida. We call it the Atheist Forum. If you'd like to join us, it's 727-441-3000. Agree or disagree? We'd love to hear from you. Our guest, Chase Hansel, who's an atheist and president of the Space Coast Free Thought Association. We're talking about a lawsuit that was conducted in Brevard County to oppose their resistance to invocations being given by non-Christian citizens and Americans, and probably patriots also. So join us if you will. Our website, talk.aof.ngo, if you'd like to find out more about Atheists of Florida. So, Chase, thanks for joining us. What else would you like to add?
I think that's about it. We're waiting to figure out if we're going to go through appeals or if we're going to get to give an invocation, and in the meantime, I'm slowly writing invocations, and I'm going to make them as good as possible. Although I have a feeling almost no one's going to be listening. It's going to be the shock of, oh, we've got an atheist in here and he's talking, and when there's supposed to be a preacher, and hopefully somebody will actually listen to my words. I'm going to try really hard on them.
Well, Joe, you gave the most recent invocation on
About 2
behalf
weeks
of
ago.
atheists. Yeah, and I was surprised to see.
Totally uneventful.
Yeah, we've
everybody-
not had any problems over here.
I mean, the people,
So far.
the county commissioners were actually listening to him.
Oh, okay. I expect ours to be potentially fuming.
Yes,
2
I
months
would
to be
imagine.
listening.
Maybe you
Yeah,
might want
because of the
to.
court case.
You might want to work in the point that while they might disagree with your message, a lot of people take the stance that there's something wrong with atheists themselves, that just being an atheist makes you an evil or a bad person. And we certainly want to take issue with that idea. That's a bigoted slander of the first magnitude.
And
It is, but I kind of, honestly, to me, the purpose of the invocation is to bring people together and to focus attention on the meeting.
Yeah, it'd be hard to
And
work
it's
that in.
Yeah.
And as important as your message is, I think it almost detracts. So I'd at least like to start really, truly focusing on peaceful, congregations of people. Maybe congregation isn't the right word, but collections of people in a local, municipality getting together and trying to solve our differences in a way that is as mutually beneficial as possible, and without shouting or throwing stones at each other. I mean, it wasn't that long ago when that's how you solved problems with your neighbors. Was you went and took a pitchfork and you tried to attack them.
You either talk
I mean-
it out or you fight it out. Which would you prefer?
Right.
Now you use an AR-15.
Well, but as mundane as these meetings can seem sometimes, it's really important that we have local governments of all different varieties
Absolutely.
that are working together to try and keep, this whole system going and to be as equitable as possible and to peacefully, solve all the various issues that we have as a society. So I'd really like to focus my message on getting people to pay attention to what their local governments are doing and participate. They don't work right if you don't, participate.
Did you notice in your experiences with this case or otherwise that there's really been a well-organized campaign for the last 3 or 4 decades to fill local offices with religious believers, strong religious believers? There's been a campaign to do that, a migration almost like blacks moving to Detroit because there were jobs in the auto industry. And you can't walk into a school board or a county commission and not find shoulder-to-shoulder Bible beaters almost anywhere.
Yeah, I don't. I've kind of noticed that there's definitely a pretty religious bent to some of the groups. I'm not sure why. I don't know if that's something that for local politics, especially in the South here, if it makes for easy politicking. It's a good group to sort of appeal to. If you can wear maybe you're a little religious, but if you sort of wear it on your sleeve a little more, then maybe that gets you some kudos. I don't know.
They have courses that you can take and the kind of keywords and phrases you want to use about lowering taxes and tolerance and blah, blah, blah that will get you elected. And then, of course, other examples that I might cite, once you're elected, you can do any damn thing you want.
And of course, I think the really textbook expression of that is the fellow who has been elected to run for the Republican position in Alabama for United States Senate to replace the seat vacated by the U.S. Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, and that, of course, is Judge Roy Moore. And I'm guessing you have an opinion about that, Chase. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take a moment to break here and let our listeners hear a little bit about Atheists of Florida and who we are. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about Roy Moore, and we're going to give you first crack at him, if you like.
All right.
And we also invite our callers to check in with us at 441-3000. If you're out of the area, 866-826-1340. 866-826-1340. We're also hoping Jocelyn Williams will join us after the break, David's wife. And he was the plaintiff in the case, the lead plaintiff, I believe. Am I right?
Yes, he's the tip of the spear.
Good. Stay with us, Chase. We'll be back in just a moment here on Tan Talk 1340. Atheists of Florida is a nonprofit membership organization founded in 1992. For over 25 years, Atheists of Florida has brought atheists together to address state-church separation issues, provide legal assistance in cases of religious discrimination in employment or educational institutions, help atheists meet others who want to live their lives free of religion, and produce the Atheist Forum. For membership information, visit our website at atheistofflorida.com, where you'll find our newsletters, annual reports, statement of purpose, and information about meetings and events. That's atheistofflorida.com. Let's talk about our outrage of the week here on the Atheist Forum on Tan Talk 1340, and then we'll talk about more. Joe?
Okay, outrage of the week. Won't take but a second. Just to show that everything old is new again, I read where the good folks in Uganda, at least some of their religious folks, are kidnapping infants and children and sacrificing them to the gods in order to end the drought, that they're suffering a severe drought there. It used to be that the Incas would strangle infants to death because they thought that their tears were pleasing to the rain gods. All this stuff keeps coming around, and century after century, the weather doesn't seem to change. Outrage of the week, Uganda. I think we also have a twit of the week, and Judy's going to handle that for us.
Before we go into Roy Moore, the person he's replacing, Jeff Sessions, this week consulted the Alliance Defending Freedom, which is a legal advocacy group that champions conservative Christian causes, ahead of issuing his controversial guidance to government agencies and departments on Friday about how to interpret federal religious liberty protections. Now, the Alliance Defending Freedom has been labeled a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Of course, they deny that. But it is appalling that our Attorney General is consulting a Christian group with James Dobson as part of it before he issues a law or a ruling on religious liberty. He doesn't consult any atheists, he doesn't consult humanists by any means, but he can consult these people.
Joining us now from Orlando is Jocelyn Williams. Jocelyn, thanks for calling in, checking in with us.
Happy to be here.
Want to take just a moment to tell us about FreeFlo and then jump into any part of this conversation we've been having?
I'm sorry, I'm not able to.
Not able to what?
Not able to hear us, I think.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe she'll call back. Yeah, we got you now.
Can you hear us now?
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
5 by 5.
Yes. Now you are.
Okay.
We're having a storm in my location, so it may
I
be
see.
impacting
Okay.
things.
So Ed had just asked you to tell us about FreeFlo.
FreeFlo. FreeFlo is the most awesomest conference ever. The Florida Station is proud to have a conference with hundreds of humanists and atheists and agnostics and freethinkers and scientific skeptics, and we're going to have a terrific 3-day event. We're going to be having speakers, as I talked about before last week, on the separation of state and church and science and evolution education. But also, we're going to be having speakers talking about social justice. I think she's a wonderful speaker, is a blogger and a former senior director in the finance industry from Bangladesh. Rafida Bona Ahmed, and she and her husband were brutally attacked by Islamists back in 2015. Her husband passed away, and she was gravely attacked and injured, and she now speaks about this, among other things. And she was presented the Forward Award in 2016 by the FFRF, and she's going to be one of the speakers at the conference, and she's a wonderful speaker. And so I would encourage people to make sure that they attend her talk. And so if you're interested in humanism, if you're interested in atheism or scientific skepticism, please check out freeflo.org, FREFLO.org. It's Free Thought Florida. Thank you.
Same to you. And any comments, questions, or insults for Chase Hansel?
No, I have nothing
Okay.
to say about Chase. He's a wonderful human being, and I would only say good things.
Well, that's acceptable. We like good things.
And you don't have to pay the $2.
Yeah.
That's right. We don't hear good things about atheists that often, so it's nice to talk to you. By the way, I hate to have to say this, but Flo is innocent.
Oh.
Well, I predict today that there's a 40% possibility that Roy Moore could end up being a nominee for the United States Supreme Court. People occasionally, well, I shouldn't say occasionally, I should say I think that there's not very much consensus on that idea. But when I look at who our president is and our vice president, and I look at the leanings of the religious right and the conservative movement and the hypocrisy of that movement in this country, to put a cretin like Donald Trump in the White House, I think that's not such a far-fetched idea. Have either you, Jocelyn, or Chase given any thought to that and what the consequences might be of that?
It's hard to know what's happening with politics these days. Things seem very topsy-turvy and upside down. I was astonished that Roy Moore was reelected the second time. So, he was a Supreme Court justice for the state of Alabama.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, and
Twice.
he was removed once because he wouldn't take down, a Ten Commandments monument that he
Right.
put up, and he was ordered to take down. And then he got reelected again, and then the whole trying not to enforce the LGBT, rights to marriage and everything.
Yeah.
So the guy seems to put his religious beliefs above his job, which is odd. Usually justices are very able to kind of compartmentalize and go into judge mode on things like that, even if they disagree with the particulars of a person or whatever. If they're able to see the law for what it is.
Well, Roy Moore is convinced that the U.S. Constitution is a gift from God and that is based entirely and as a result of Christianity. So it's not a matter of him subverting any of his views. Those are his views, and for that reason, he thinks Christianity is more important than the U.S. government. Obviously, he wouldn't have been impeached twice if he didn't think that he knew better than the Supreme Court.
And just as importantly, he was elected twice, so
Yeah.
Well, it's in Alabama.
maybe a third time.
Go ahead,
They're
Jocelyn.
going to. I don't think they would put him for the Supreme Court. I really don't. I recognize that his focus on religious and public policy and things like that might be reflecting what some in the conservative party would want, but I think he's too extreme. I think where most people in a reasonable mindset, and I'm not saying that right now we necessarily are reasonable with our government, but I don't think put him forward for that.
All right.
Well, one thing's for sure, he beat his challenger by almost 10 points, even though his Republican challenger was endorsed by Donald Trump, and he figures to beat his Democratic opponent in the general election. It's almost a certainty he will be the next senator from Alabama. That's a very unhappy prospect in and of itself.
I completely agree. I would just say, though, this is Alabama. And that's just but a tiny little blip in compared to being able to sit in this the entire country. I think enough reasonable-minded people would stop him from getting a position of that magnitude.
But in the Republican Party, there were only 4 reasonable-minded people who opposed getting rid of the Affordable Health Care Act strictly on political grounds, because it's widely known that this would not have helped the American people to get better affordable health care. It was strictly a political issue. And when asked about it, the politicians said, well, that's what our commitment was as Republicans, is to simply get rid of this without regard for the consequences to the people. That's irrelevant to us. Wouldn't or couldn't they take that same approach to putting somebody like Moore on the Supreme Court to help move this country back into the 19th century for the next 40 years?
I think he has ties to, based on what I vaguely remember, with neo-Confederates and a far-right movement and things that I think will not play well optically for the party as a whole. And I'm a Democrat, but I'm just saying I can't imagine that they would want to take on that type of baggage from a political perspective. He brings a lot of negative focus to the party for them. I can see what you're saying, but I would it would be heartbreaking. It would be for me as an American.
I couldn't imagine that a man who boasts about grabbing women by their private parts could end up presiding over this country.
Me neither.
There he sits.
The guy who just listened to it lost his job.
Chase, go ahead.
I may have missed something. So Roy Moore as the Alabama senator, that seems maybe not certain, but at least highly likely. Supreme Court justice for him. I mean, I guess he's already served in the state Supreme Court.
That's just Ed's.
That's just
okay.
That's just me, but remember, he is a judge, right?
Don't forget that 80% of all statistics are just made up on the spot.
Exactly.
Well, you
and
know
as
what?
Abraham Lincoln said, "Don't believe everything you read on the internet."
Right.
That's
I've
right.
Seen I've seen
Well, you know what?
signed off on that.
What frightens me about all this is that Steve Bannon has been talking about running similar candidates all over the country, even primarying other Republican incumbents with Roy Moore types. And if you get too many of them in there, can you imagine what the Senate's going to be like? It's a very frightening proposition.
Yeah, the House is already under control of a number of those kinds of people. Just like this week, last week, they tried to pass they did pass, I guess, the anti-choice bill, which would make abortions after 20 weeks illegal in this country. So having people in the Senate who are in alignment with the people in the House will be real trouble for all of us, even if he's not a judge. I mean, a Supreme Court judge.
He has nothing good in store for any freethinker anywhere, as far as I can tell. I would like to take just a few seconds to quote a paragraph here from an interview that he did with a guy by the name of Jeff Stein. Then maybe I think it's about time for Tracy. But he was talking about how there's actually communities in Illinois or Indiana that are under Sharia law. And Stein says, well, why don't you name one or two of them? And he says, well, I can't really name any of them. It's different in American law. America is founded on religious concepts. And he says, well, which ones are Sharia? He says, well, they're somewhere in Illinois or Indiana, up there somewhere. I don't know. I was informed that they were there, but if they're not, it doesn't matter. It's a big issue with him. But it doesn't matter if he actually has to prove that they exist. Sharia law incorporates Muslim law into the law. That's not what we do. We do not punish people according to the Christian precepts of our faith. So there's a difference. Anyway, he didn't even know where these towns were, in spite of the fact that he was willing to swear up and down that they did exist. This is called confirmation bias at its worst.
Well, of course, there were Christian principles incorporated into the founding of the country, such as oppression of women, abuse of children, genocide against the native peoples, and slavery. And it's because we don't use the Bible for our Constitution that we've been able to wean ourselves away from these atrocities and atrocious ideologies, and the fact that the Founding Fathers, by and large, came from Western Europe that also did not have constitutions. They just had kingdoms, which is what Christianity endorses, a kingdom where you don't have civil liberties or civil rights, and the king is divinely empowered, and his lineage is.
I give you legitimacy, and you give me legitimacy in return. And between the two of us, we'll have our hand in everybody's pocket.
And I think that's why the first one of our Bill of Rights specifies that the government would not establish a national religion or any ideologies that would then be the basis of our
in their
laws.
pockets or my hand around their throat, one or the other. Yeah. Anybody else have any wonderful things to say about Roy Moore? It's a short list.
Yes. All right. And if you're listening, 441-3000. Let us know what you think about him, for better or worse. But, I think, it's very clear that that's why we have a Constitution, is because the founders did not want this country to be a theocracy or a kingdom. and they did not want the Bible to be the basis for adjudication of issues. They brought forward ideas about civil liberties, the democratic process of representative government, none of which is found in any of the major religions that still strangle the human experience, right? It's quite the opposite.
Chase, I wanted to ask you just to go over a little bit about your group and how somebody over in that area can get in touch with you if they're interested in joining with other freethinkers.
Oh, by all means. So we go by two names, the Space Coast Free Thought Association, and we run a meetup under the name Brevard Atheists. So you can look us up on Meetup for Brevard Atheists, or if you just do a Google search for Space Coast Free Thought Association. Also, there's a local humanist group. They're involved with us on the lawsuit with the county commission. The humanist community of the Space Coast, kind of a sister group. We don't compete. We love each other. We're always working together on something. Actually, we've got some good activities coming up this month, including a blood drive, which we're going to be working together on. So we mostly deal with, end up doing stuff kind of at the south end of the county. Brevard County is really funny. It's very, very, very tall and skinny, and it's kind of bottom heavy with as far as population goes. So we're occasionally trying to get more things going up at the north end of the county, but it just seems that there's way more people at the south end, and that's where all the happening bars are. So, so we meet at the libraries and coffee shops and different places down there. So yeah, look us up if anybody's in the Brevard County area, Melbourne, Palm Bay, anything like that.
We can
Between
see
the two groups, there's plenty of volunteering and social work and all kinds of good stuff to do.
We're going to see you at FreeFlo?
Yes.
Oh, goody. Well, we'll look for you there. We'll meet you there.
Do we need a plug from Jocelyn as to how to get a hold of them as well?
Yes.
Yeah, just a second. I wanted to second what Jocelyn was saying about FreeFlo. I missed it the first year, and I'm very sorry I did, because we went the second year. My wife and I did. We had a blast. And we didn't even do all the extra special events, the comedy stuff and everything. We missed out on those, but even still, just doing the lectures was an amazing time. We had to spring for the whole full Monty to the Friday night party, and I'm not sure if I'm going to find a costume in time, but
I hope so. We have costume judges. We Seth Andrews, Cy Babe, and Doug Mesner, Lucian Greaves of the Satanic Temple. They are the judges this year.
Well, we've got a couple of Pastafarians who are very devout and, of course, have their pirate uniforms. So they'll be coming in that full pirate regalia. But I don't know. I've not been much of a costume person since I got out of college, but I'll maybe have to drum something up. But
well, we got to give Tracy a little time. Chase, thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Atheist Forum. Same to you, Jocelyn. I hope we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me.
And good luck to you, Chase. Quote for the program: first there was polytheism, then there was monotheism. They're getting closer to the right number all the time. All right, Tracy, take it away, baby.
All right. So the recent approval by the FDA of RU-486, which is the abortion pill, and I think it's been called Mifeprex by the current licensee, has caused major consternation to the right religious groups and evangelicals and their mouthpieces in the government. One of the advantages, of course, of this pill is that it allows women to take care of an abortion. It has to be within 10 weeks, so it has to be an early-term abortion. But in the privacy of their home, they don't have to go to an abortion clinic where they can be terrorized by many groups that are trying to prevent women from getting abortions. On top of that, 89% of the counties in this country do not have abortion clinics. So many women do not have access to abortion clinics. 1/4 of all Americans live in rural communities. Only 10% of doctors do. So, this particular pill can be I hate to use the word godsend, but it's a medical miracle for some women that are trying to control their family. Certainly, by not having access to something like this, and women not having the ability to control the size of their family, It can put women that are in bad situations into worse situations. I would say that since RU 486 there was originally a ban put in place by George H.W. Bush that prevented this pill from being imported originally from France. But one of the very first things that President Clinton did when he took office was to remove this ban. And women have been using this pill since the year 2000, and nearly 1.5 million women have used the drug. It's very safe. They've only come up with a 0.02% adverse effects. Now, to compare that, that's smaller than the adverse effects for anybody who takes Viagra or Tylenol, and certainly lower than the adverse effects from pregnancy, bringing pregnancy to full term, or having a surgical abortion. So it's really a safe way for women to have an abortion if they so choose, which of course is perfectly legal in this country. But already you've got Representative Tom Coburn, he's a Republican from Arkansas, who is promised to introduce a new patient protection bill for women focused on the drug. He wants to protect women, he says. The measure would require the pill to be used only by doctors qualified to handle serious abortion complications. He also wants doctors who prescribe the drug and patients who get the drug to place their names in a registry, because he thinks that would be an additional safeguard. I know it. I'm not sure what he wants to safeguard people from by putting them into a registry, but he thinks that would increase safety. Currently, in order to prescribe the abortion pill, the FDA says physicians must be able to provide surgical services or arrange for those procedures in the case of an incomplete abortion or severe bleeding. Doctors also must assure that women who take the drug have access to emergency care. I'll just point out that Representative Chris Smith, who's a Republican from New Jersey, he says RU 486 is a baby poison. It's a baby pesticide, he says. You know, it's amazing because there's so many people working so hard to place restrictions on abortion in general and on this abortion pill and specifically. But by doing so, it's also preventing research into other potential advancements with this medication. There are those that believe that this may be useful in treating HIV, Cushing's disease, glaucoma, infertility, endometriosis, certain types of tumors, and even perhaps in some cases breast cancer. But by placing all the restrictions, or attempting to place all the restrictions, it's also, restricting the research in these areas. Right now, 59% of abortion providers provide the non-surgical or the abortion pill, and 17% of providers offer only the abortion pill or the non-surgical option.
The thing that always intrigues me is why it's so difficult to understand the difference between a fetus and a baby. They are two different things, aren't they? I mean, why do we have two different words for them, for crying out loud?
Well, at up to 10 weeks, 10 weeks and less and longer than that, it's not even a fetus, it's an embryo.
There you go.
Yes, they tend to want to call them preborn babies, they like to call them. Yes.
Yeah.
God loves zygotes.
Right. Doesn't really even resemble a baby at that
But
point.
it's always just spin. It
is.
It's just the spin to try to create the illusion that somebody's out there hacking off the heads of these babies.
Perhaps you saw I think representative who resigned this week had a 100% rating from the Anti-Abortion League, and then he was recommending that his girlfriend get an abortion as a pregnancy resulting from his
Tim Murphy.
his illegitimate affair with her.
Tim Murphy. Love family values.
Yeah, family values, that's right.
Yes, Tim Murphy from Pennsylvania, lifelong pro-life proponent, member of the pro-life caucus, introduced the bill recently to ban the abortion after 20 weeks. He was the one that introduced that bill.
Our hypocrite of the week.
Yes.
Well, the whole religious right, it fits into that category. I mean, if you saw the inauguration, the guy on the podium who had 5 kids by 3 different women, was the white guy. I mean, that was the president, right? And this is the guy that the conservatives and the religious right endorses, who just, literally spits on all of their values.
I want to clarify one thing about the right to life movement. It's not the right to life movement. It's the right to birth movement. After you're born, you're on your own, okay? In fact, the Republicans believe that everyone should have the right to be born and live long enough to be executed.
That's a very good point. Right to life.
Right to birth.
It's a problem with their name. That's absolutely correct. I would point out also that the ACLU just very recently is challenging some of the federal restrictions that limit women's access to this pill. Currently, the pill can only be dispensed in clinics, hospitals, and doctors' offices. The lawsuit by the ACLU contends that the drug, again, used for abortions only up to 10 weeks of pregnancy, should be made available by prescription in pharmacies across the U.S. For heaven's sakes, the women don't take the pill in the doctor's office, and the doctor does not oversee the actual abortion. The woman takes the pill home, takes it in the privacy of her home. So what difference does it make if a doctor gives it to you or a pharmacist gives it to you? And obviously there would be a lot more doctors that would be willing to prescribe this pill if they didn't have to stock it in their office.
They're all lying for Jesus. That's really... No, liars for Jesus. That's what they do.
Yes,
basically.
it is.
I want to call it something else, and we all know there's only one reason for this, and that's to make it as humanly difficult as humanly possible for a woman to own her own body.
That's very true, and it doesn't matter whether it's a birth control, obviously, that has come up recently with President Trump taking away the mandate from Affordable Care Act to provide birth control to women at no cost as part of their insurance program if the company feels that it impinges on their religious freedom because they don't believe in birth control.
I thought it was that they didn't have to provide birth control at all, not just at no cost.
You may be right. The Affordable Care Act currently is at no cost, but you may be right. It may be not required at all.
Here's a question, and I get this from Gloria Steinem, that I think every right to lifer ought to be required to answer in writing and not be allowed to retract. And that is, if your daughter has an abortion, how many years should she spend in jail? Mm-hmm. I'd like maybe some callers could let me know how much time their daughter deserves.
And the irony seems to be that the religious right wants to force these women to have the children that they can't afford to have, and then do everything to prevent them from having health care or welfare or food stamps or whatever. Guys, I hate to say it, but we're pretty much out of time here. We're wrapping up the Atheist Forum. You can find us easily on the internet at Atheists of Florida. And we'll be back next week. And I hope you'll join us again then, along with Judy, Tracy, Joe, and me. I'm Ed Golly. Remember that if the story seems a little too implausible to be true, don't believe it just because somebody wrote it down.
Make them prove it.
You have been listening to the Atheist Forum. To learn more about Atheists of Florida, visit our website at atheistofflorida.com. Continue the discussion on our website, talk.aof.ngo. Join us again next Sunday for another edition of the Atheist Forum here on Tan Talk 1340.
WTAN, Clearwater,
FM 106.1,
WDCF, Dade City, Tampa Bay, WZHR, Zephyr Hills,
FM 104.3.
Listen.
The aftermath of Nate, Hollywood mogul fired. I'm Ann Cates. Tropical Depression Nate is taking aim at Tennessee after coming ashore in Mississippi as a Category 1 hurricane. Correspondent Ryan Young is in Mobile, Alabama.
It's all dry. You have to look for signs of this storm. We drove 2 hours out toward the coast to see if we could find any more damage on Dolphin Island. And the good news there is they have sand and water in the middle of the road, but for the most part, no homes were damaged, and that's the key here. Even though there was heavy winds last night, no one took a real pounding in terms of losing significant amounts of their house.
Harvey Weinstein